Hello, it's Educated Grunt here with you today, and today I'm going to be doing my 7th episode in my Chosin Reservoir series about the U.S. Army on the eastern shore of the Chosin Reservoir, November to December 1950, Task Force Base in McLean. I was really kind of excited about this presentation. I've been struggling trying to find actual footage and or images of Task Force Faith or McLean or any of the Army units serving up on the Chosin Reservoir, and I couldn't. But I did find some excellent interviews from survivors of the Chosin campaign, mostly Marines, but they gave some excellent insight into the intelligence failures at Chosin. I'd like to do a quick shout out to one of my sponsors, Nick's Haberdashery. Nick's is a great place to go this year for the holiday season. They have all kinds of things, from hard to find vintage clothing to toys to books to anything. They're also having a 10% sale off for the sale on everything for the rest of the month for your holiday season. Also, Link's Library. Link's Library has a very wide selection of books, toys, games, etc. on Amazon. I'll be posting links to my sponsors as well as all my references that I've used in making this little video piece for you. So without further ado, let's get started on our presentation, shall we?
So the decision then, which had been made by MacArthur to do the Incheon landing, which was to get behind the North Koreans and cut them off. The decision was good. He wanted to get behind them, and he did. And within a matter of days, we recaptured Seoul. The decision then was made that he wanted to do similar. He wanted to backload the Marine Division, take them around the south, up to Wonsan, and cut across the country and go up to the Yalu River. When the 1st Marine Division landed at Wonsan, we started moving north. There was the 8th Army on the west and the 10th Corps on the east. The objectives of both were to get to the Yalu River. But the unit that went up into the Chosin was the 1st Marine Division.
We were put aboard trucks, a whole convoy of 6-bys, and we go up about 15 miles to a little town called Sudong. Sudong mean?
In Sudong, they notified MacArthur that the Chinese are in the war, and of course he wouldn't believe that the Chinese were in. They're just volunteers, and he had an idea that somehow being American was such that they wouldn't think of fighting the Americans, and he had a guy, a general under him, General Almond, who used to refer to the Chinamen as laundrymen. You're not afraid of any laundrymen. It's amazing. They would be critical of the enemy like these people can't fight. And believe me, they could fight.
These Chinese that were now fighting had fought in the Chinese Revolution, in the Chinese Civil War between the nationalists and the communists, and a lot of them had fought the Japanese during the Second War. So this was a well-trained, well-equipped man. And this were not a bunch of volunteers.
China did not want to have the United States on the southern border. They were dedicated to North Korea. They had been supplying them, and they didn't want North Korea to lose. They were truly afraid because MacArthur was so determined that he would continue to go on into China, across the Yalu River.
General MacArthur had always understood that if you control intelligence, you control decision making. He'd had built an entire intelligence community in his area command that listened attentively to what he wanted and gave him the intelligence that reinforced his already held views. They were sycophants. MacArthur wanted total control of the war and its execution, not second-guessing by his subordinates or outside interference by Washington, and especially by the White House or the Pentagon. If his Tokyo Command headquarters were solely responsible for collecting and assessing intelligence on the enemy, then MacArthur alone then would decide how big the enemy threat was and thus what to do about it. MacArthur's authority put America, the relatively new civilian intelligence agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, in an awkward position. It was not permitted to have a representative in Tokyo or participate in preparing intelligence estimates for the 8th Army. During World War II, MacArthur had done the same thing, excluding the CIA's predecessor, the OSS, or Office of Strategic Services, from his Southwest Pacific Command. MacArthur, who never spent a single night during the war in Korea, preferring to sleep in his headquarters in Japan, wanted no outside intelligence challenger. As one historian of the war wrote later, only after the great and catastrophic failure on the whereabouts and intentions of China's armies would the CIA finally be allowed into the region. On October 15, 1950, MacArthur had a meeting with President Harry Truman on Wake Island in the middle of the Pacific. The general told the president that the war would be over by Thanksgiving and most troops would be home by Christmas. When Truman asked, "What will the attitude of of commie China?" MacArthur said it would not intervene. Even if China tried, they would not get more than 50,000 troops across the Yalu River. MacArthur promised, citing his G2 intelligence estimate. In fact, on October 19th, 260,000 communist Chinese soldiers had already crossed in Korea. General Eisenhower in Europe was similar to MacArthur in some ways. He was the supreme Allied commander, while MacArthur held the same position, except MacArthur had some personality quirks. He was much more grandiose and dramatic. You know, he would, at this point, seemingly do no wrong. He was the golden child. He was the victor in the Pacific, a hero of World War I. He put down the bonus marchers in the 30s. He received the Medal of Honor for basically just getting on a PT boat and going to from the Philippines to Australia. I don't think we ever had a commander that had concentrated his office one person with so much power. There was a book written called The American Caesar. I forget who wrote it, but he goes into great depth on how he is, or he was, excuse me. He was running the occupation of Japan. He was essentially functioning as an emperor, and he had kind of an imperial personality to begin with. He's a very dramatic guy, very old school military leader whose command style, frankly, just doesn't hold up very well in today's culture, and it was all about him. He loved the vertical pronoun, "I shall return." It was all about him. And the way he used the media, and the way he had an entourage everywhere he went, and surrounded himself with yes men who just told him what he wanted to hear. He went a little past his expiration date at this point. He had a long and interesting and amazing career, but this was near the very end. And I think it had all gone to his head. He thought he could do no wrong. He thought that he was the emperor, basically. He just thought he could kick ass and take Korea, and it would be super easy, and the Chinese wouldn't intervene, or even if they had to, it'd be so easy to just beat them. And of course, he wanted to use nuclear weapons against China when they didn't intervene, just to blow up Beijing, no problem. He had, at this point, become a very scary guy, in a sense of being so much power in this one person. And President Truman, of course, Truman didn't really know how to handle it. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff in Washington didn't really know how to handle him either. He was like a one-man show. It's complicated. A lot of different reasons. Certainly, people didn't know how to handle MacArthur's personality in general. And there was also a political dimension to that. That was wildly thought that MacArthur was gearing up for a run for the presidency in the United States after the war. So he was a live wire in essence. MacArthur McCarthy had just risen his ugly head. Joe McCarthy is a factor in the American politics and the Democratic Party, and Truman in particular, and has been accused widely of being soft on communism. So another factor was that it plays into the calculus here. You know, here this war hero is staunch on communism, while Truman is easy on him. Here's a guy that fights the commies left and right. Make America strong. That kind of jingoistic attitude. Killed a lot of good people. And then the fact that it is everyone created to unite as a democratic, capitalistic, pro-American peninsula. Everybody wanted that. Truman certainly wanted it. It would have been great. I think openly for the North Korean people, as we've come to see under Kim, what has happened. But the intelligence began to trickle down, and in the fall of 1950, that the Chinese were not only going to enter, but had entered. And hundreds of thousands of Chinese and millions were moving into Manchuria to get into place to move in. MacArthur didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to believe the intelligence, and his lieutenants actively doctored a lot of this evidence. So really, it's one of the greatest military intelligence failures in the history of our military, the United States Army, and ultimately it is entirely General MacArthur's fault. Well, this ends episode 7 of my Chosin series. I'll be making another one very shortly, delving a little bit more into the characters, the lieutenants and such, on the G2 staff for General MacArthur, who are responsible for feeding the bad information. But ultimately, the responsibility for the lack of intelligence and any preparation for the Chinese intervention lays on General MacArthur. I thank you for your time. Please like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment, and have yourself a great day. I look forward to you viewing me again. Bye.